kind of go from there. So the first order of business is the approval of the June 8th, 2020 minutes.
I move that we approve.
Thanks, Thad. And do we have a second on that?
I second.
Thank you, Roman. Are there any questions or comments about those minutes? All right, if nobody objects, then we will say that those minutes have been approved for the June 8th, 2020 meeting. Okay, and like I said, we'll go ahead and just take the agenda out of order since Detective Virgil isn't on the call right now. So that takes us to item number 4, which is the discussion of next steps for the task force. Mayor Weir's on the call with us today. Did you want to go ahead and maybe go over your list of things first and then we can have a discussion on that?
Oh, hey, I had a little trouble hearing you, Becky. I don't know if everybody's muted, but there's a little bit of feedback. So I'm sorry, what was your question for me?
No, you're fine. So we're going to go ahead and skip to item number 4. Would you like to kind of go over that project list that we kind of discussed, the email that went back and forth as far as the projected plans potentially?
Oh, yeah. And I'm sorry, I don't have the agenda pulled up, but yeah, I know that we have really been having a lot of discussion and thought about how to continue this work. I mean, which is obviously, very, very important and essential. And I know that within this group, there's a lot of enthusiasm to continue. So there's just, it's just some important things I think that everybody needs to understand about, what a task force is versus an actual commission or board that's created by either charter or the city council. So we have a handful of boards and commissions that are required either by state statute or by charter. And then the rest of our boards and commissions are created by council ordinance and structured by council ordinance. So Human Relations Commission, which currently exists, has changed, frankly, over the years. It was really, for many years, its purpose was really focused on fair housing. And now, because of some great leadership from people who have served on that board over the years, it's really expanded its focus beyond housing to really a lot of the issues that we're talking about diversity, inclusion, celebration of our community and the cultures, the culture that exists within our community. I know what we've talked about is potentially merging this group with the Human Relations Commission, which makes a lot of sense in my mind, because there is a lot of crossover in purpose and interest. But that may not be for everybody. I mean, certainly, some of you have served on the Human Relations Commission, do serve on the Human Relations Commission. And I think we would really have to, if we were to do that and, kind of inject some of this energy into the Human Relations Commission, we'd really have to, think a lot about how we would staff that, how we would define create not just really a purpose and a mission, but also really a strategic plan, I would say, for the Human Relations Commission. So that's one option. I mean, making this a permanent committee that's created by the city council is a possibility. I just am concerned that that might be. I'm just not sure that we have the capacity as a city to serve both of those, or, two different commissions that have, a lot of sort of similarity in purpose and mission. The other possibility, and this could be combined with a city board or commission, is really to take a lot of your ideas and be a community-based organization. I mean, like, community of concerned citizens, maybe, visit with them about how, maybe you could help to grow that organization and bring that purpose. I mean, just honestly, when you're under the umbrella of the city, there's certain restrictions that come with that. I mean, city employees can't serve on boards and commissions. That's one thing. And I know Roman's a big part of this group and takes his personal time. As Casey and I had talked about pre-COVID, when, council elections were still going to be held in April, there's some desire. I mean, there's been some desire expressed by some members of this group about having political activity, which I think is fantastic. I mean, I think that there is certainly a place in our community for there to be more political activity, and that can't happen on a city board or commission or within the walls of City Hall, or even on a platform like this where we're utilizing public resources. It cannot. Yeah. I mean, you cannot use public assets for political purposes. So that would be very limiting. I feel in some regards is that, so, I just feel, to me, understanding a lot, through the proposal that was sent, and then just individual conversations with many of you about, what it really is that we are trying to accomplish. I feel like probably the best combination of things would be work with the human, let's maybe have a meeting with the Human Relations Commission, see if there's an opportunity for growth and collaboration and definition of purpose and strategic planning within that group, that this group could help to move forward. And then I would really encourage, some conversation outside of this meeting about propping up, helping to prop up existing efforts within the community, or forming a community-based organization that could do things that a city board and commission cannot, and I think would have some impact on what our goals are for the community. And I'm certainly willing to engage in that conversation, but it can't happen within, the four walls of this meeting, if that makes sense.
The Human Relations Commission was invited to this meeting, right? Were they invited, Becky?
Yes, they were.
They were invited. Oh, sorry, I have a little bit of feedback here. No, yeah, they were invited. I sent the agenda to their staff liaison. Their staff liaison was working with them to attend the meeting, but my understanding is that they weren't very receptive of responding to that invite. So.
And can I say something to Mayor, Becky, and everyone here? Mm-hmm. So Human Relations, and I'm on Human Relations. I'm the co-chair right now. Human Relations, the new Human Relations is less political. They're more personable. And I'm just giving my opinion so everyone can see where we are possibly, since I see them more. And Lupe couldn't come because she's not feeling well, but she did get her BS. She wanted me to let everyone know. And Gary was busy doing his work for the city, Mayor. So, for the county, I'm sorry. So this is what I know about Human Relations. They are all very individual and have so many things individually on their plate. we were combined with a disability. That changed the game for us, to me, because the people that are there, and it's about half and half now, that were there through disability, they had their agenda. And then they combined us with human relations, and we had more of a scene where the whole community stood on relations with each other or whatever. It kind of was hard to combine, but somehow, some way we did it. But that does not change everybody's purpose for being in a commission. I came to a commission actually originally wanting human relations and, you know, like I said, asked to do a festival, and I did that. But everything has changed now. And so what I can say about human relations, it would be an individual invite and a partnership. I don't think it can be combined with the people that are on there now, because a lot of people are caring about disability issues now. And you know, sometimes you're a lone wolf in that meeting. And I think they're not ready to just go straight into something that wasn't their original purpose. Does that make sense, Mayor, to you, what I'm saying?
Yeah, it does. And let me just say that there has been at least one very positive thing that's come out of this COVID-19 pandemic. And I'll tell you what it is. There's a incredible uptick in interest in what's happening at City Hall. Some of that is, and what's happening at the county and what's happening at the state. And a lot of that is because people are looking to their government leaders and elected officials for information and guidance and comfort during these times. So, and a secondary, you know, another huge factor is the fact that we're doing all these online meetings, and it makes it much easier for people to attend. They don't have to get a babysitter. They don't have to, you know, leave their home. They don't have to get transportation, you know, to come to a meeting. So that's a positive. And we've seen a great number of new people that we've met who have applied for boards and commissions, who have been inspired to get involved because of a variety of factors. So that was not the case. A few years ago, we had a very difficult time filling our boards and commissions, and a difficult time achieving a quorum for some of our boards and commissions. So that's when we did a fair amount of combining. And we combined the Citizens with the Disabilities with the Human Relations Commission. I mean, part of it was just a numbers reality, you know, that we had we didn't have enough people. So by combining them, we were able to fill the spots. And I will, you know, I want to make this very clear, because I have heard it since this group has been formed, is people with disabilities is a part of diversity and inclusion. I mean, there's no question. I don't think any of us would argue that it's not. And when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we need to remember people with disabilities. So yes, I think Nina is right. I mean, changing adapting a mindset about what the Human Relations Commission is, and then sort of trying to fold in people whose real passion is services and accessibility for people with disabilities, whether they're, you know, physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities, you know, whatever the case may be. It is a challenge. So that might, because of our increased applications for boards and commissions, and I would say not in small part to the work that this group has done in revising that application and making, and what Becky has done to be pushing that out there. Maybe it's time to revisit that, Nina, and say maybe that combination really doesn't work very well, because there are strong and maybe competing priorities within that group. So I think that that's very important information to have and for people to understand. And maybe that's something that the council needs to discuss is, you know, at the time it was sort of out of necessity, but maybe now times are different and the Citizens for Disabilities Committee could, you know, function well separate from the Human Relations Commission and not combined. So that would then open up, yeah, because we can't have, I mean, if our focus is equity, you know, that can take on a lot of forms, and maybe we just put too many irons in the fire.
If I may, the thing that I don't know, I guess I just don't understand creating separation in these groups already. I thought the point of this was diversity and inclusion to include everybody: race, creed, color, sexual orientation, identity, ability. It's to be a voice. From what I understand, to create policy for the City of Independence that would protect and all of these classes of people for future generations. So I guess I don't understand why. What does the disability a group? What do they do? What is their purpose?
So prior to being combined with, I'm sorry, Nia, prior to being combined with the Human Relations Commission, they were primarily focused on accessibility, transportation, you know, the public realm, I would say, you know, it's like, are we, and just, you know, and issues of discrimination and bias, you know, are they, I mean, equal opportunity for things like, you know, employment and so on and so forth. But they were really focused a lot, in my experience with them, on transportation. I mean, because obviously that's a critical need. And it was mostly, when I first was involved, I mean, it was mostly people with physical disabilities. We expanded that. Joy Copeland, who was the former director of comprehensive mental health, joined that committee and brought the voice of people who have mental illness as a disability. I know Jeff at Job One is very interested in being involved in something. I mean, whether it's, you know, diversity and inclusion, human relations, citizens with disabilities. I mean, you know, he really wants there to be a voice for the people that they employ at Job One who have disabilities and opportunity to employment, education, recreation, so on and so forth, transportation, housing. I mean, all those things.
Can I say this? So I don't want it to be misunderstood, and maybe people are misunderstanding. So what I was saying, just to clarify this, that disabilities, to me, should have never been combined, but it had to be at the time with Human Relations. Their job is huge all by themselves. I'm thinking this task force won't become a commission. Okay, so hear me out, because we can't be political. And sometimes you have to be. So if this task force is not a commission and it's a standalone group, all the people on disability can be on it then and be political. I'm not talking about this as a commission group. If this is a commission group, it's going to be so many people that can't be on it. Just truthfully, Mayor, that may not serve our purposes unless it's just to, like you say, Thad, get some things in place. But the task force should include everybody. Human relations, disability, and everything. And the mayor just said that if you're a commission, you have to go a different way. You can't even be political. You can't do things the same way, and our hands are tied. So I'm thinking the task force should include everybody, but disability maybe should be separate. Look at all the new people joining disability. And they are a strong group with a strong voice. And they don't always G on human relation items. Like if I say Black Lives Matter, they'd be like, yeah, all lives matter, Nina. But we're talking about disability today. And I get over usurped all the time like that. So what I was thinking is the task force included everybody and commissions were specific. That's the way I was thinking, possibly.
No.
You know, I don't know.
No. I mean, if it is a community-based task force, yes. If it's, I mean, this task force was created by me. I mean, this was created by the mayor to address a specific issue. And it can't just go on indefinitely without a specific purpose. I mean, I don't feel comfortable doing that without consent from the council. And whether it's a board, a commission, a task force, a committee, whatever, that is created under the city government, it cannot be political. It can't have any kind of political activity. So yes, I mean, a community-based task force, you know, can operate that way, but not at the city. So this group needs to either, I mean, to remain as a task force, there would have to be a specific task, you know, assigned to it, or its work is, you know, its purpose for being created is done. Although I think we all recognize that the spirit of it and you know, and the ongoing work certainly, you know, is not done and, you know, won't be done. And, you know, I don't want to lose the energy and thought and enthusiasm that's been created through this. But I mean, there's just some you know, there are some procedural and technical and frankly, you know, legal things that we have to be considerate of.
I didn't want Thad to think that I wasn't, you know, including everybody. Thad, I'm the most inclusive person we know. And you know, I'm not kicking nobody to the curb, but that's my problem. I'm always trying to include too many people. But I like this task force. If it's specific like that, because I know that's why Casey and the mayor brought it, I still would want to do that. But I'm not ever excluding anyone. I want everyone to know that everyone has this purpose.
Becky, did you want to comment on that since you're sort of
I guess I just have a few questions just to get a better understanding that might be beneficial to the group as a whole. Nina, since you're the only one that was able to come from the Human Relations Commission, you're the only one that can provide us that perspective, I suppose. So you say that everybody's kind of going different directions in that Human Relations Commission, and you kind of went on the tangent of the Citizens with Disabilities Advisory Board faction of that commission. I guess my question then would be, like, as a commission, what are some of the projects or things that you guys have been working on that if these two groups merged together and started to kind of come up with new things to kind of work on, what would merging these two groups be taking away on the current projects that you guys are working on?
The mayor knows we worked on, talked about transportation. It's a big thing. If you don't have a car, and most people here have one, it is a huge thing. That was important. We even had one of the members who that's what she's been fighting for years come. We have a lot that one gentleman, Mike, he works like pseudo for the city. He believes in bullying. He says, I'm just here for bullying mostly, but then sometimes he has disability issues because of his hearing. We've been working on bullying. We've been working on transportation. One lady, she's worried about how she can get to places. There is no way, even to the social service office, where if you have a wheelchair or whatever. Human relations, they basically were doing mostly like Martin Luther King things or simpler things right now since Thad and Roman and people like that left. I seem to be a continuum. We also did, the Heritage Festival. I seem to be the continuum of all these things when other people go different ways. So I kind of have everybody in my head to support and uplift everyone. But those are the things we've been working on lately. And we haven't had a meeting since COVID, but we were meeting monthly before COVID, monthly. And not many people can do that. So things are being worked on. All I'm saying is, since I'm not going on a tangent. What I'm trying to do is separate it out, what is really happening, not just in your mind's eye, but what truly is happening with all these groups that I have been on.
For sure. I mean, just using the examples that you provided, though, I mean, transportation, bullying, those things affect a wide group of people, not just citizens with disabilities. So, I mean, I guess I don't understand. I guess what I don't understand then is like why that conversation can't be more broad to talk about that on a level where you're talking about it as it affects a lot of different groups versus just those specific individuals.
I'm not saying that it can't be more broad. All I was saying is laying it out, what is going on that I know of. And this task force, I'm a person, I can hear everyone's voice. And that's my, that's my curse and my forte. So I was listening to how you can't be political if you're a commission. So I worried about that. I know what people need on the disability. So I worry about that. I'm a person that I don't want anybody's ball to drop. And it's not a tangent. And it's not impossible. These things should be for everyone. So when the task force goes into it, they're going to need counsel from Disability Commission if it's, it's standalone. All I'm saying is that a lot of people don't want to lose their focus. I know this. They don't want to lose their focus and their what they came to the table for. I mean, I am such a chameleon. I can do whatever needs to be done because I'll put a passion in for it anyway. So I don't go on tangents. I try to express other people's opinion that couldn't come. And that's all I would say.
For sure.
Are you going, Becky, again? Do you have other questions, Becky?
No, I don't have any. That was my question. Go ahead, Casey.
Okay. I have a couple questions. Well, and one thing is, I know there was a few things that as a task force we were going to talk about that we never got to just because of time, and sometimes our meetings can run long because we all have our opinions and thoughts, but because I know one thing was the comprehensive plan and kind of going over that and something else. Anyways, I think Roman had that big old list of stuff. And I know that some of it we didn't reach. So I don't know if the task force would stay together as it is just to kind of review those things. And then once those things that we had initially talked about discussing and going through, and then, moving on, because then it would be an end time, because then it would feel like we did review everything, discuss everything, go over what we thought was needed. So that's one thought. The other thing is with the community group that you discussed, Mayor, because I do think there are great community groups out there that could be supported and be broader and have more community support within just individuals within the community. And I think that would be really great. My question is if there isn't something like we've done with the task force where we are discussing issues of diversity and inclusion within the city and some of the procedures and with the police and everything like that, what authority would those community groups have to the city council, to the police force, to the city itself that a board and commission wouldn't have? Because with the board and commission, you bring recommendations and there's kind of this presence there of people that are representing the city as citizens, would there be more authority having something, and not authority like things will be changed, but that it has more like stance to be heard than like a community group? Does that make sense? Because sometimes a community group may come to a city council meeting, say something, but then that's it. But the board of commission seems to have more. You think it's, I'm just curious, what do you think?
Well, I guess I'm going to disagree with you, Casey, as somebody who was involved in, you know, was very civically involved before in community-based organizations prior to running for elected office. I mean, I was part of a community organization that was a major factor in getting the school district boundary change done. Indie Energy, very powerful, you know, very influential, community-based organization that engages with the council, both on a individual level and comes, you know, and makes recommendations. So I don't agree. Chamber of Commerce, you know, I mean, these are all groups that are independent community or nonprofit organizations that have a tremendous impact. It went, and you know, we don't ask them for necessarily for recommendations, but they create agendas and bring those forward to the council. You know, they say, you know, put this tax on the ballot. I mean, for instance, I mean, they say build the farmers market. I mean, these are some examples of the things that were initiated by the community. And so I don't agree that a board or commission necessarily has more clout than a community-based organization. I want to hear, Meredith wanted to kind of share about what she sees as next steps. So I'm going to give Meredith the floor, the go-to floor.
I appreciate that, and thank you, Mayor. And I think we're on some great discussion. One thing that I volunteered together with Nina and Roman per our last meeting was to really kind of strategically look way forward. I think there was so much work and activity that we had started on pre-COVID and then got heightened with some of the unrest and conversation around equity and race and law enforcement collaboration. And so I think it's best that we continue in the momentum that we have. And so what we did is we kind of brainstormed together and said, if we were going to talk about merging, creating some structure, integrating into the comprehensive plan, and really kind of dissecting through all of these issues you all discussed, who should be included, what our priorities would be we be recommending, would we be decision-making, would we be a arbitrary community-based organization? The best way to do that is to get all of those voices in a room, have an expert who does facilitated conversations like this and listening, take all of our ideas and our current kind of operating practices, if you will, put them on a whiteboard and help us aggregate some of the trends and things that we hear so that collectively as a group, we can agree with some consensus. Yes, we structurally fall in line better under Human Relations Commission. I'm just giving that an example. Yes, our group needs to include all of these parties, not to be limited to any one or the other. And these are our top 3 or 4 priorities that are practical and tangible for the next 2 to 3 years. So Becky, if you could, just in like 3 minutes, I just want to kind of outline, kind of go through this. If I can get permission to share my screen, I want to share with the group and then get this group's feedback as to whether they think this is a good order of next steps. Again, I think before we talk about what our it should be, we need to look at our structure and our function. Okay, I think I've got it. So can you guys see my screen okay? Do you see my little mouse moving?
Yes.
Okay, I do have a little bit of feedback. So on this proposal for facilitated listening and visioning work session, per the mayor's recommendation, per all of the input we heard from everybody on diversity and inclusion, noting that the mayor said this is a timeline-based group with objectives and tasks. We probably met 50% of them, but as Casey mentioned, COVID happened and we did not get to the comprehensive plan. We didn't get to strategic planning, but there seems to be good reason for exploring, is there a good time and purpose to merge with the Human Relations Commission? So what we had proposed to do is create a strategy that would allow, and it says 3 distinct groups. At one time, we were talking about the community of concerned citizens. So we're really talking about the 2. The Diversity and Inclusion Task Force and the Human Relations Commission. But essentially this plan would allow us to look at interest, involvement in history with diversity and inclusion matters for all people. We would get together to collectively agree upon shared goals and visions, what our performance should look like, and then walk away with a recommendation to the mayor and council or mayor and city administrator about what our structure and way forward should look like. So what we did is we put a next steps kind of plan and timeline together. And what you can see is kind of where we are right now, proposed action steps. We were going to host, and I think we should still try to get the Human Relations Commission to join us in a special meeting to include all of those members. During that meeting, we would walk through the following plan that I'm actually just going to give you a high level version of now. And then we would really talk about the 4 objectives here. So again, making sure everybody has voice is objective number 1. Really to collectively review the stated goals and objectives of the work session and the listening session. What do we hope to accomplish? What do we want to hear? And what do we want to walk away with? Then actually, 3rd objective would be to talk about a potential facilitator, whether that be recommendations for this group or experts that you all have had some encounters with, and then logistically plan an actual listening and work session between the 2 groups. So getting into the nuts and bolts, the listening and vision work session, I think there are 4 things that we could accomplish between our 2 groups to help us really land a way forward. Ultimately, as this says, the goal would be to get the 2 groups together to collectively explore and agree upon our shared upon goals and our visions, our performance expectations, and then the most appropriate structure and way forward so that we handle as a broad umbrella, as the mayor said and Thad said, diversity and inclusion work for all people, realizing that there are certain maybe priorities or groups that have more timely or critical, time-sensitive issues that we're discussing, but equally really kind of attack, if you will, this umbrella of diversity and inclusion work. So real quickly, the 4 things that we would hope a listening session with our 2 groups would accomplish. First, leadership and learning development. All of us have had some level of exposure and expertise in diversity and inclusion work, but it is actually a science. There are people who are going to school and professional development seminars. I think together as 2 collective groups, we can grow in our learning and our language and our narrative of what that actually means. So as Thad mentioned, who does that include? Who does that speak for? What does that mean when we say a community or a city body is attacking diversity and inclusion work? So we'd spend time just getting familiarity with those concepts. Not to mention we'd take any framework, hopes, goals, and expectations from the mayor and the city administrator, what they envision diversity and inclusion work looking like for the city as a whole. Then we'd spend the next hour actually doing some data mining, some digging. So between our 2 groups, whether we do it collectively in conversation, whether we break up in small groups, a facilitator would tell us how to best do that. We look at our history. Nina talked so eloquently about there was so much involvement and change and priorities over the last couple of years and how human relations came to be that I have no history of. So I think you cannot know a way forward and strategically plan until you know where you've been. And so we would spend some time just getting to understand not only the tasks and objectives from this task force, but the history of the Human Relations Commission. If we needed to include the citizens, community of concerned citizens in there, we could, but really just understand organizationally what has been our capacity and history as a group attacking diversity and inclusion work up to this point. So just getting all the data on the table. Then I love this part, and I think this is the best part of where we kind of give voice, people's priority, their perspectives. This is where Nina says we really need to hear the voice of what diversity and inclusion work should look like. So that's storytelling. Again, a facilitator can do this really well. We could have breakout groups, we could do some narrative, we can have some fun interactions, again, barring COVID restrictions. But basically we give ample space and time to listen, to reflect, And everybody has a perspective on where it would sit and fit better, whether it be community-based, the importance of being able to advocate, even though a city board and commission cannot take up a political stance. So all of those things really just need to be aggregated and collected in terms of the story, if you will, and the voice of all of the people that are represented. And then the last step of a listening session would really be kind of the meat of our work, aggregating the data and really being clear with some themes, some trends, some outcomes, and some next steps. I think to Casey's point and really kind of supporting the mayor's point, I know it just happens to be at the same time we're having this conversation. Organizations like CSL has said we are adding now for 2021 a pillar of diversity and inclusion integration into our foundation of what we do as an organization. So they've pitched a whole proposal to the board. They've asked myself and Jennifer Manuleleua to chair an actual entity within CSL that is going to tackle just this project. So I do believe there is some expertise, there's some good grounding, there's good legwork that can be done, there's good assembly and momentum that could be done in a community-based group. But again, there's probably some great support and reasoning about being nested under an existing city board and commission. And so what this 4-step process, if you will, would do in a listening session, it would give everyone voice, it would give us an opportunity to reflect on history, it would give us an opportunity to be mindful of what the mayor and the city administrator's recommendations and expectations are. And then to Casey and Roman's point, we really need to look to moving forward. Okay, so what does it actually boil down to mean integrating into the comprehensive plan, putting a strategic plan together? It would really be boiling down some practical next steps for what our work would look like, whether it be this fall or next year or moving forward. And so out of a facilitated listening session, we as a group, the collective group of Human Relations Commission and the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force would have 3 to 5 next steps that we would all agree to: a proposed placement, an organizational structure in terms of where we live, and then what practical, tangible things we would do in the next year to 2 to actually say, okay, we are moving the needle of diversity and inclusion work for the community at large. So it seems like a lot, but I think a facilitator looking at this outline really can give us some good guidance and some structure, keep us on time and task to accomplish those 4 things. Look at our history, find an organizational structure, get some tangible to-dos, and then create an action step to move forward. So this is a recommendation I think some of us are presenting to this group at large. Casey, I'm done sharing if you want to take me off the shared screen. Would love some feedback from that, because I think we've already started in today's conversation exactly what this listening session is designed to do. There's a lot of different perspectives, history and understanding of how government works, how it doesn't work, and where this would be best suited. And I think a facilitator could give us the guidance, the science, and the expertise with some experience on how to make sure we keep moving diversity and inclusion work forward, but keeping in mind all of the parameters and requirements that have been set for us. So.
Okay. I think that's great. Meredith, I think that's great. And I think you make some outstanding points. I mean, there's a lot of, things to consider, a lot of people, groups that are involved. And I think what you're recommending would bring some focus and understand what our capacity is on various levels to sustain and meaningful groups, organizations, whatever the case may be, however that comes out. And I think it would give individuals, whether they currently are serving in some capacity as an appointed or elected person, maybe more of a sense of where where they want their energy to be placed, whether that's, in an official capacity or in a community, more of a community-based capacity. So I think that's a really good next step. We would need to obviously spent a little time figuring out how to organize that event. You know, I think you make a great point that there's people who are trained and educated in how to do this and how to lead this. You know, we're going to have to figure out, you know, what cost may be associated with that and how that would be accommodated. But I think that can be all certainly worked out. And we may think about, you know, other organizations and entities who would have an interest in participating in that. So I think that would be a fantastic next step, because as you say, we all have our experiences, our insights, our opinions, but that would really bring a professional level of organization and moderated discussion about how we're going to continue to move towards our goals. So I think that's a great suggestion.
Just hearing the different conversations, everybody made a lot of great points. And Meredith, I do appreciate you going back through that presentation one more time, and considering COVID and how that would actually look structured. I believe it would be a good idea to break those down into 4 separate sections if we were to have to do some type of Zoom meeting or virtual meeting in order to capture those particular components, and then also to allow feedback in between those particular times. And so as we cover each section, those meetings can then be disseminated, shared, and also will give the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force an idea of the sense of the climate, which once we go through all 4 of those steps will give us a very good idea about how to stay on track and to really bring accountability to diversity and inclusion, whether that is rolling it into the strategic plan that is coming up in development for the next, I believe it's next year, but then also putting things in place for the 2040 comprehensive plan in order to make sure that the city has things in place for the long-term building of diversity and inclusion well before, you know, in 20 years, I'm not certain if I'll be with the city or if the mayor will be here, or if any of us will be here. And so to make sure that our work is put in place, the piece of having that accountability inside the plan, but also being able to structure and bring some funding to diversity and inclusion, because as I'm learning and dealing with the CDBG and home stuff and community for all ages, there are a wide variety of policy changes, ordinance changes that structurally are leaving groups out, and that our policies are actually leading towards a more, or not leaning towards more diversity and inclusion. And I still feel, if I look at the plan that sample plan and timeline that I created, there were 5 different phases outlined. We are still like in number 2, where we are still trying to define what diversity and inclusion means for the city of Independence. And so there is a lot of information, and I do believe that a diversity and inclusion consultant would be important, or a facilitator would be important. I know there is one with the Urban League. And then there is also one that I have been in communication with, who is Michelle Gimes, who does also diversity and inclusion on a corporate level, who actually reviewed the plan and broke it down in regards to stating that whatever was outlined in that timeline was in line with us being able to actually provide strategic planning. And so I say all of that to say we are headed in the right direction. And if we can break down that meeting into 4 smaller pieces, but then also keep in mind that we want to make sure that we bring accountability to diversity and inclusion. And then to touch on the point of being merged with the Human Relations Commission, I'm in agreement with Nina in that diversity and inclusion being put into the Human Resources or Human Relations Commission may dilute its ability to be effective. But I do know that if there is no funding and goals from a city's perspective in regards to what is to be accomplished, then the task force itself or the Human Relations Commission itself will not be effective in being a good supportive commission and board for the city of Independence. And so I am hesitant to actually throw in human relations or diversity and inclusion with human relations. I'm not certain what that would look like now, but I think as we move through the listening session, I believe we will get further. We will get a better picture of what that would actually look like. But most importantly, there has to be some level of accountability. And I think we're on the right track, and I believe the next steps would be following what Meredith recommends.
Just something else I want to just put on everybody's radar. The council will be doing its strategic planning in August, August 20th, I believe. So that is another important step. Inclusion, diversity and inclusion is embedded in our mission statement for the city, our vision statement for the city. We have not had a lot of specific action items or tactics regarding diversity and inclusion in our Independence for All Strategic Plan 1.0. That will be certainly something that will be addressed in this strategic planning session for our next 5 years. And, that's a professionally facilitated strategic planning session. All of the council members are having pre-meetings with our consultants to prepare for that. Mine's coming up. This will clearly be one of the topics I discuss with the consultant before we enter the strategic planning. And I would certainly encourage you to contact your council members and remind them to make this a priority for our city council strategic plan.
This is Nancy Harris. I didn't get to hear what Meredith had. Would someone make sure that I get what she presented?
I can send that in an email to everyone after our meeting.
Okay.
So I guess,
sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Tad. You wanted to say something for a while, so I'll let you take it.
I feel like there's a lot of fluff talk going on. I really don't care about anything other than policy. Policy needs to be put in place to ensure the longevity of diversity and inclusion. And whether it be on a community group or whether it be on a city commission, I don't care. I want whatever can be put into place policy-wise. That's what I stand behind, and that's what group I want to get behind. So I don't, and because as my time on the Human Relations Commission, we did affect policy. We changed we have added verbiage to be inclusive. And that's the policy, the type of stuff that I want to be a part of in this city. I don't believe that community organizations, while they have a lot of pull when it comes to initiatives, I don't see them changing much city policy. That's where I want that's where I want my focus to be. Like in city initiatives, yeah, absolutely. Community support helps that move along. But when we're talking about changing policy for the city of Independence so that it has a working system of diversity and inclusion, I whatever that looks like, that's what I want to be a part of.
And if I could just echo for the purpose of the minutes, I definitely support Fab's position. I think it's such a unique and interesting time in independence too. However, that I'm glad the city and the partners that exist are now more open, I think, and receptive to diversifying what boards and commissions look like. As the mayor mentioned, I think you've got new faces and diversity sitting in an actual city chartered, city counciled spaces, if you will, that you didn't before. And while I do have some historic knowledge of what you and Roman were able to accomplish before, I think what I'm hearing folks say is that there needs to be some kind of reinvigoration or accountability or awakening, if you will, to the current day Human Relations Commission. And I think all I'm offering is that you got to first make sure you have the right team at the table. And so I think we've got such a great hybrid and unique array of voices that have now come together as a result of this task force. Now the key is, how do we get them integrated over to a place of seat of power, of influence, with the same kind of unity and focus on an existing body that has, as you mentioned, the ability to leverage policy to change policy. I completely agree. The community organization route is a slower, much tedious, sometimes laboring process that may or may not pan out in the end. But if you have the right people, they will definitely make a splash and not go unnoticed, and can get things influenced and changed. And I can definitely say that from my seat within the school district in just the short time I've been here with really no authority at all, but definitely agree and echo your comments as well.
So as far as next steps, I guess it would be helpful from a staff perspective of what this timeline looks like. And I mean, I guess we just need to figure out, excuse me, how much support staff needs to be providing to be able to get these meetings organized. And I'll ask the mayor as well, like, is this an idea that you're thinking that staff is going to need to provide support to organize these meetings? Are you looking for this committee of the citizens to kind of organize that? I guess, because I mean, obviously to move forward, we're going to have to start kind of planning this out. So I just need to know what part staff plays and what part the citizens are playing to be able to organize this kind of event, if you will.
I know the mayor has some comments, Becky. I guess as just kind of the author of the plan, what I would recommend and suggest for the mayor's consideration, because COVID interrupted kind of the nuts and bolts objectives that this task force had, and we were making progress but not fully complete. I would love to see this task force be the entity that kind of execute this plan and help make sure these 4 facilitated sessions get executed. That way it becomes kind of the responsibility and the agreement with the facilitator that when we are done with these 4 sessions, we feel very clear about a recommendation of where it sits, what the organization is, what the next steps are, and what the calendar year looks like. So I don't know when we want to get that accomplished, but my recommendation and request would be that this task force, since it already has the momentum and the solidarity to execute these 4 sessions of this listening and visioning session.
So what I would recommend is that you work with Becky. And Becky, we put a resolution before the council for approval to give that authority, you know, to, I just, you know, I want to make sure that everybody's, you know, aware and of what is happening, because like I said, this task force was put together, you know, by me and me only to address, which is, you know, perfectly fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But since now we're talking about, you know, taking expanded steps, which I think is great. I just want the council, the full council, to be able to understand where we're headed, ask questions, and, you know, have an opportunity to support. So Becky can, you know, help craft a resolution that we can get on the council agenda. I mean, you know, we should be able to get it on the next meeting. It shouldn't take terribly long. But if there is a cost that the council, you know, if you're requesting funding from a council, that would have to be included in the resolution. But I just think that we should, you know, for maximum success, you certainly would want to bring this before the full council and get their support.
And with that
Becky,
being
do you
said-
think that that's the proper way to proceed?
Yeah, I think if, you know, what you're looking for is support of the council for this task force to move forward with any additional initiatives, I think a resolution is appropriate. If the idea is that the city is going to have to somehow fund these initiatives, I think we would be hard pressed to be able to get it on the next agenda, in my opinion. Obviously our next meeting is August the 3rd, and I would think that would be a conversation that this group as a whole needs to have to consider how much they think it's going to cost to be able to move forward. And obviously I don't know, I could be incorrect, but if we don't have that dollar amount now, we would need to meet again before we could discuss that.
And Becky, to your point and to the mayor's point, I think you got two options. If, like Thad mentioned, either we by executive action and recommendation, the mayor could say this is going to fall under the Human Relations Board and Commission to give it its legitimacy, and then we get to work. But I think the whole purpose of having a facilitator is to have buy-in, is to have that community change conversation, that narrative, so that we're moving forward on the same strategic plan and vision. With that said, I think we can craft language in the ordinance where the council's giving us approval to put out an RFP, request for proposals. So therefore, this group's only assignment really is to get landed on what we want to see this facilitator do, which I think we've started with these 4 steps, and then push something out. I mean, maybe there's a max budget that the council says if we are going to offer anything, it's going to be no more than $2,500 or $3,000. But I don't think, and again, you correct me if I'm wrong, you all know those processes better. I would think after a certain amount, we probably, and just for making sure we get the right person, we invite expert facilitators to bid on the proposal of what we're trying to accomplish with this visioning session.
So just for my clarity, because we've gone through a lot. So is the purpose of the moderator to determine whether or not these committees need to come together? Like, is that the purpose of the moderator, or is the purpose of the moderator to really define like a clear idea of diversity and inclusion for the city? I guess maybe that's where I'm kind of getting caught up. Is the moderator going to tell us like, yes, it's a good idea for you guys to join forces, or you guys should stay separated?
Go ahead, Mayor.
So, Mayor, okay, 2 things. And I'm sorry to bury you in bureaucratic, you know, details. The way I see it, Meredith, is not either one of those. I mean, I just see it as diversity and inclusion is important to our community. All things being equal, how do we best accomplish that? Is it through these existing committees? Is it something else? I mean, is there a new model? Is it a combination of community-based and appointed? I mean, I just think that I don't think we necessarily want to say we're looking for an answer to this question. I mean, it's more, this is our goal. What's the best structure or combination of structures to move us towards that goal? Is that accurate?
I would agree. This is an assessment phase. So any consultant, before they make a recommendation, I mean, we are, for all intents and purposes, the experts. I use that loosely for diversity and inclusion because it mattered most to us. We have some of us longer than others, history of doing this work in various venues and committees prior to this point. Some of us have experience from Human Relations Commission. And so we've got different tentacles of what diversity and inclusion means and what it looks like. And all of us want to see some level of voice, representation, advocacy, and the ability to change policy to move forward. Well, we can't just bundle that up in a bag and throw it at Becky and the mayor and say, here you go, this is what we need to do. Now, Roman has already done so much of the legwork in that he's pulled other comprehensive and strategic plans from other locations, and he's created a timeline for how we need to walk along that. but he's also a city employee. So the ability of bringing in a facilitator allows us to throw all of that stuff in the cloud, and someone who's done this work before and literally create silos. Okay, this is what I hear you saying is important to you. This is what I hear you understand you saying diversity inclusion means. This is what I hear you saying you want your city to look like in 3 to 5 years. And this is what I hear you saying, this is the ability you want this group to be able to take, whether it be voting action, recommendation, advocacy, whatever. So that person will help us get to those 4 or 5 fundamental pillars, if you will, to move this forward. To me, it's a structural and a functional step that has to happen before we actually affect any change. Because now, if we didn't have this history with 2 different groups, maybe even 3 different groups doing all of this work in different hybrids in different ways, we wouldn't need this step. But because we want to make sure change process includes all the voices at the table, all the history up to this point, and where we want to go forward, I think we need a shepherd to kind of get us there. So this proposal to council would be to allow this group to take that charge, to do this work, to create an RFP, and this is just my recommendation, for a facilitator who would help us accomplish these 4 things with this limited budget, and to put that out for proposals that we would bring back to the council, which a facilitator, I think, reading our goal and outline will very clearly and more professionally than I ever can, will say this is how they exactly plan to do this for us. This is the work they get paid to do. So
I'm going to just say Meredith has suggested an RFP, request for proposal. Request for proposal typically comes with a dollar amount already assigned. It's like, here's how much money we have to spend, and how are you going to do it for this amount of money? I would recommend we do a RFQ, request for qualification, and just say, here's what we want to achieve. You tell us what you can do and how much you can do it for. And I think that might get us better responses, because there is no dollar amount assigned to this, and I would hate to venture to just put one out there. So Becky and Roman, I mean, you guys working inside the City Hall, do you agree that a request for qualifications would be more effective than a request for proposal?
I think that would be fine. I mean,
I
I'm
agree.
not a good request for qualifications by any means, but I mean, I think that would probably be a good first step.
Yeah,
I
and
agree.
then we'll get a diversity of pricing and expertise and whatever, which might give us a better, otherwise we're just kind of picking a number out of thin air of how much we think it might cost, and we could eliminate good people, we could eliminate good people if we put a dollar amount to it.
So kind of back to my original question, what do you guys foresee the timeline on that being? Like, is it something that we're... Yeah, so I mean, are we wanting to just kind of jump into this RFQ process, or yeah? How do
So
we...
my recommendation would be to, I mean, I think we can start working on this, Becky. I don't think there's really a reason to wait. I think that with the council strategic planning scheduled for August 20th, so we have 2 council meetings before then, and a study session. I think getting this sort of rolling, and obviously it's gonna, we're gonna have to include some other staff, city manager, city attorney, who review everything. But I think it's very important to put this on the council radar, that this is, something that's important. And I'm not saying that it's not on their radar. I'm just saying that since we do have this strategic planning session coming up, I think they should, be aware that this is an important discussion that's happening in our community, and one that, needs attention paid to it. I'm just going to be very honest. Our, resources are not great. Financial resources, we have a lot of things and they're not getting better. We were expecting different progress on this virus at this point. That has not happened, which is continuing to put extreme pressure on our financial future. So I don't think this is necessarily a big ticket item, so to speak. But there may be, once we get some responses from the RFQ and understand, how much money we're talking about, then, there may be some creative, innovative opportunities to help to fund that, or to cost share that in some ways. I mean, there may be other groups that would be interested in participating in this type of discussion and training who might, I'm just talking off the top of my head. I mean, but I just know how every single solitary cent is under scrutiny right now.
Can private funds be garnered to apply toward this, or does it have to be?
No, I mean, it could be, yeah. I mean, we can think about that, but let's do the RFQ and see what we get, and then that will give us a better sense of direction. But I don't see any reason not to just move forward with that. And Becky, obviously we need to talk with Zach about it, just to get his input on how to best execute that.
So, excuse me, what I would propose then is after this meeting, I'll see, I think Zach's in the office today, so I'll see if I can maybe get a meeting with myself, Zach, and the mayor, and then maybe potentially Brian Kidney to see what those next steps are and how he'd like to proceed with this request for an RFQ, because typically that does come from their office. And if he thinks that it's doable to get it on the agenda for August 3rd, then we'll move in that direction. If his recommendation is something different, obviously we can talk about that and see if we need to wait until the August 17th meeting, I think it is, sorry.
Yeah, and that August 10th meeting might be, that study session might be a good opportunity to have a little bit more discussion and with the council and bring them up to speed. So, we'll just see kind of how it goes.
Okay.
I'm going to have to jump off. I have another meeting to get to, but thank you all for your time.
And thanks for your leadership, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and so as I was saying, so I'll work with the staff side of things just to see where we are with that RFQ and what meeting, and then I'll obviously relay that information to you guys just so you are apprised of the information that we're talking about on the staff level, so you know kind of what steps we're taking on this side. Is there anything else that you guys need me to do to kind of move this forward?
Can I ask about RFQ? I know everyone else knows what that is, but that's just feelings, putting out of feelings out there. Can a person like Meredith be part of that?
It's a request for qualifications. I'm not positive on the specifics of that. Those are things that are usually issued through our finance and administration division. So I don't really have that background knowledge of the specifics for the request for qualifications. But
from my understanding of request for, I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Roman.
And so from my understanding of request for qualification is that it will put it out there to say, these are the particular goals and objectives we want to accomplish. And then it will go to different professionals would then be able to look at it and see what type of time and effort it would take to actually execute those goals. And then they would send back their particular bid and amount of what the cost would be, if that makes sense.
I thought that's what it meant, and I was correct then. I just always, I'm a person that always may clarify for everyone. And if that's the case, I think a number should be limited. We can't have 25 people if that's possible. And that's why Meredith seems to have a lot of experience with this, and Roman probably does too. And a million people may have an experience at this. But I don't want 25 people coming in from all over different places and it gets confusing. I wouldn't want that, because in the end, I don't know if you can close and say only 4 people can, 3 people, 2 people, I'm just saying that. I can at least say it.
No, that's right. And I believe that, if there are 25 submissions and those are reviewed, it definitely would get broken down to their experience, and then their actual, their costs would be something that would be heavily analyzed during these times.
Becca, the only other thing I was going to add is I think if for next steps, if this group could look at that proposed listening session I shared, I think that's the start to make sure we're in agreement with just the last 4. We probably need to put some cushion above and beyond that as you guys are writing it in an actual RFQ. But to Nina's point, you're going to write it so specific. I think like we're going to want somebody who knows the independence community. We want someone who has a history of a minimum of XYZ years or experience working with so many clients on doing diversity and inclusion at a city level or at a community level. To Thad's point, someone who has experience with making recommendations for policy change and not just community activism. So people will not apply based on whether they meet the metrics or not, if that makes sense. So you shouldn't. I don't envision you getting a whole slew of people, especially not in COVID anyway. But the experts who do this work well and who feel like they can meet all of the metrics we state, they will be the ones that submit proposals, I would think.
I agree. Excuse me. Okay.
This is a little off of that topic, but it was part of our agenda with Detective Virgil in his presentation. He was on for a bit and then it seems like he needed to go do his stuff. While this is going on, I do think it's important that we get we never received the information from the chief about all of the actions that they take and the policies that they have with, what was that called? 8 Can't Wait or something like that. So anyways, I know, Becky, you had followed up with him, and I think, I don't know if Detective Virgil was going to do that, but just saying it would be nice to have them to follow up with that with us to see what they're doing in regards to that.
So just to that point, Casey, that's what item number 3 was. That was what today's presentation was. But unfortunately, Detective Virgil, he apparently is on a case. I don't know what the proper term is for it, but he wound up having to leave us early. So he kind of got thrown into, work, and it happened. So I do apologize that we weren't able to get that presentation today, but we'll definitely get it rescheduled for the next meeting. Obviously, we can anticipate meeting again, probably I would assume within the next 4 weeks. I would think. So for that next meeting, again, I think it's also going to kind of depend for what we discuss on there. Outside of the presentation for the police procedures, it's going to depend on the information and feedback we get from staff. So we'll probably have some discussion points regarding what we've talked about today, but regarding those next steps in that process. Did anybody else have anything else on item number 4 for the next steps?
Do we need to be there when you make the proposal, or you have that, whatever the word is, the proposal for the city council about the RFQ? Should there be representation at the city council meeting?
I mean, it's always nice to have representation. I don't anticipate us going away from our hybrid meetings anytime soon. So I don't think it's going to be a matter of you needing to necessarily be there in person, but it would be good that if we get an item on the agenda, that support from the committee is always appreciated, because it shows that you guys are backing what this proposal is, and you're not just asking for things, but expecting other people to execute it for you, if that makes sense. So it is always appreciated that, if you do have an item on the agenda, you'll get the go-to meeting information. And I would encourage you guys to at least dial in to show that you're there and present.
Also, during the study session, would there be an opportunity for people from the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force to speak in regards to just to update the new council members of the efforts that have taken place thus far?
So I think if there is a presentation for the study session, I would assume that it would be coming from this group. I need to get more clarification on what they would be expecting at that study session. And obviously that would also dictate when our next meeting's going to be, because that study session is slated for August the 10th. So again, there's a lot of things we need to figure out probably within this next week on the staff side of things, so we can determine when you guys need to meet next, if there is going to be some sort of expectation that you guys provide a presentation on the 10th. So there's a lot of moving parts to this for sure.
So if there's a study session, just in case I can't be there, and you know, most of us can't be there, can today we suggest 2 or 3 people that can talk about it or get together with that, and then that way I'll feel more confident that I know someone's going to show up. So I would like to say, and everybody can name their person. I always want to name Thad, but I won't this time. I just trust him. But no, I would say Meredith for me would be the person if I had someone coming to a study session and her eyes gets big because she's like, I got something to do. On the 10th, I'll feel more secure knowing that I said that, in case no one shows up, and that would be, you know, bad. And I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, and like I said, I think if there is a study session presentation, I mean, that would be something that we're going to need to get back together on and kind of see what that looks like from your guys' perspective. And then obviously you can determine now, you can determine at our next meeting who's going to be doing the presenting. I know the last presentation that this group made back in February, it was Roman and Casey. So, I mean, we could shake things up and have different people present from the perspective of this committee. And I think that would be, you know, potentially a good direction to go.
Sounds good. That's why I said 3.
All right. Anything else on that topic? All right. I'm not hearing it. Okay. So again, number 3, we're going to have to move that to our next meeting, and hopefully we'll get to that first. So if something happens, we can get that presentation out of the way. I will check and see if there's any type of documentation that I can at least send over to you guys. But I think their main push was to have dialogue with you, and that was the point of the presentation today. But we'll definitely get that rescheduled. Keep an eye on your email. I'll send out the proposal that Meredith shared today. I'll send that out via email sometime today. And then obviously any additional information that I think you guys need over the next few weeks, kind of leading up to some of these benchmark dates of council meetings and study sessions. All right, well, if no one has anything else, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Becky.
Okay. Good work, you all. Thanks, Becky.
Have a good day, guys.
Thanks,
All
everyone.
right, y'all have a good one.
Thank you.
How do you get out of this thing? Yeah, I said it. Where's the end meeting? Okay, I'll find it somewhere.